Let's continue talking about population ecology. We just got a few more things to wrap up here. And we mentioned several times this idea of limiting factors, but never really talked more in depth about them. So before I go off this to the next slide, we'll talk about those. Limiting factors can be things like resources, food space, water, territory, mates, that kind of thing, but it could also be disease. There could also be predation, other intrinsic factors like stress and aggression. Even if we think of our own species, this could be personality issues. And so there are lots of limiting factors that could be on a population. So we don't need to strictly think of this as food or not food. Now, this particular population graph is called a boom bust cycle. Typically shows a predator prey relationship. It shows a small amount of lag time, what is called lag time, um, for one species to adjust to another species change. And so the best example of this is oftentimes the snowshoe hare and the lynx. Whereas, and just reproducing that graph that we saw on the other page, get your X and Y axis. And if the rabbit population starts to go up, then what would we expect to see from the lynx population? Well, it's not going to go up immediately, but it will go up. And so it's going to kind of follow after that. And it's not going to go up quite that high, actually, because of some other things we're going to talk about later in this unit. But as the lynx population goes up, you'd expect the rabbit population to go down, which is going to, in turn, cause the lynx population to go down. And they're going to be on this kind of cycle with one another, following this boom and bust kind of thing. Now, this is oftentimes just seen with predator and prey, but you could see this with other type of relationships. And if you were to insert a third species into this graph, and I think this is important, I've seen this on an AP exam actually, the third species, like say a buffalo, something that a lynx isn't eating, and that obviously snowshoe hares aren't messing with. The buffalo's population is largely going to remain unchanged as a result of the interaction between the snowshoe hare and the lynx. And so I think that's important. Now, when we talk about human populations and it has to do with their growth, this shows the growth of human populations since, our beginnings as hunter-gatherers. Once populations began to group into cities, the human population started to grow. And I love how these graphs show the plague, which is, I guess, more and more relevant to us in these days and times. But you see that dip in the population. And then right around here or so, you have even more, maybe this way, you have like the Industrial Revolution. Factories making things, uh, vast amounts of medicine available to people and food available to people, and you see the upturn of human population. There are factors that affect human populations, though, and we can talk about those, and oftentimes you can even see them in these types of graphs called age pyramids. And here I just have three types that you might see and represented by the three different kinds of graphs, whereas Afghanistan has a very large young population. You have males on the right, on the left, females on the right, and then here you have the percentage of the population in different cohorts. And so if you look at Afghanistan, over 16% of their population, 8 plus 8, is 0 to 4 years old. So it's a very young population. Whereas in our own population, this is from 2005, so this just needs to be adjusted some. That same 16% represents all the way up to age 9. Well, why is that? There are lots of factors that can feed into the reason that a population is reproducing faster than another. Um, and that we could get into a whole lot of issues here. You can get into issues of freedom. and ethics and governmental control. You can get into technology, religion, and there are lots of factors that we can, I mean, again, we could open up a wild box here and begin talking about all the factors. But our own population seems to be pretty straight and narrow. There are certain parts of the population that are bigger than others and smaller than others. This is my own generation here, probably the smallest group of people in the United States for per age percentage, that aren't currently dying, that aren't old. And then you have like the boomers that are typically before they started to die were one of the larger groups, population groups. And so, whereas in Italy, you have a steep decline in the percentage of children. Less and less people in that part of the world are having children. And note here too, the percentage of females over males at certain time periods may be increased or decreased because of war or other different reasons that are going on. So again, these types of age pyramids can bring a whole lot of questions to the table, and they aren't just simple who's eating who. Obviously, in our own population, it doesn't work like that. And so we have to come up with different ideas. And so a lot of times a question concerning these types of pyramids will kind of take you down certain paths, and you just have to be able to read the pyramid and see if that kind of thing fits.